What you got there?
It's a smoothie.
Jarl Balgruuf, better known by his full title,
Jarl Balgruuf,
the Greater, is our guy, collectively. He's our man. He's the Baelor Breakspear to our Sir Duncan. Okay, maybe that's a step too far, but he is one of the first characters you meet, or at least should meet, in a position of power that has your back. Now sure, this is because you grab an ancient relic for his dragon-obsessed court wizard, give one of those scary lizards the 1-2 combo of its life, then reveal yourself to be Dragonborn. But even after that, he remains a stalwart friend. He gives you a promotion, a pack mule, the right to buy a house, a useless weapon, and even lets you put a dragon on his balcony, provided you can stop these two from fighting for the better part of, well, basically an afternoon. He even asks you to help him with some family issues, and that perhaps shows a darker side to our favourite Jarl that he keeps under wraps. So let's look at a popular theory around Jarl Balgruuf, the evidence for it, and his strange ties to a Daedric prince. Strap in. It's time for a foray into a bunch of forums that haven't been opened for the last 12 years.
I am Jarl Balgruuf, and I be ballin'. Ballin', Jarl ballin',
Awesome.
ballin', swag.
So let's start with the theory, then work our way back from there. But to do that, we need to look at Jarl Balgruuf's family. He has a brother, Hrongar, with whom he seems to have a strong enough relationship with, as he acts as the traditional Nord voice on his shoulder, and he has 3 kids. One of them seems alright, I guess. Frothar, I think that's right, who wants to be a warrior and actually preaches patience to his sister, so Balgruuf seems to have done an alright job with him. Then there's his daughter, Dagny, who is a spoiled brat. That is the entirety of her character. That's kind of all we get to work with, and as annoying as she isn't disturbing. I wish she'd shut up half the time, but she doesn't say anything off-putting. The same cannot be said for the third child, Nelkir, who initially comes across as bratty when you first talk to him, like his sister, saying,
"Another wanderer, here to lick my father's boots. Good job."
Except Nelkir is a key component in the Whispering Door Daedric Quest, which we'll touch on in greater detail later, because there's weirdly a lot to this, especially given how short the quest feels in-game. But enough about that, now to the point I was getting to. You'll notice that I did not mention a mother in this family unit, a wife for Jarl Balgruuf. I looked around for a mention of her in-game, and it doesn't seem like anyone has dialogue about her. I don't even think she's mentioned in a book, like a journal or a letter or anything like that. Now, if you can prove me wrong otherwise, please do, and educate other viewers, but that then leads us to the theory in question, finally, which explains Jarl Balgruuf's wife's absence. If you wade into the waters beneath the bridge leading to Dragonsreach in the Zeem's beloved Cloud District, you will find a nameless skeleton without any context. This random skeleton has attracted a lot of attention from the Skyrim community, and many have theorised that this is Balgruuf's wife. Yes, our beloved Jarl may have committed uxoricide. But you Balgruuf defenders might be thinking, is there any proof to go with this fun yet morbid theory? Well, no, not really. At least nothing overt, because, as I said before, Balgruuf's wife doesn't get mentioned ever, and you have to do some far-reaching to make this theory work, which we'll get into doing later. But also note that this isn't the only theory for this here skeleton. No, the good people of Reddit... Wait, good people? Really? The people of Reddit were quick to point out in this 12-year-old thread that there is a letter in the Bannered Mere from Maven Blackbriar. An odd thing, considering that Maven operates in Riften rather famously. The letter is addressed to a man named Kristoff, and about how she is no longer angry with him, wanting to rekindle their relationship while asking him to come to Riften. Now, we never see Kristoff, and his letter beforehand, found in the Blackbriar Manor, tells Maven that he is staying in the Bannered Mare, essentially apologising for a mistake that costed the matron of the Blackbriar family a considerable sum of gold. Of course, since Maven knows where Kristoff is, and we know that she isn't a forgiving woman, nor someone to admit she's wrong, she could have had Kristoff terminated, possibly by the Dark Brotherhood given her ties there, and the body was thrown under the Dragonsreach bridge to hide it. It is something that Maven would do, and use a bit of deception to ensure that Kristoff doesn't see this coming. Another theory suggests that the body is a victim of Irileth's protectiveness, with it belonging to a would-be assassin meeting the blade of the Dunmer housecarl. But while they both make sense, I reject them, because the Balgruuf one is more interesting and makes better content. More importantly than that, these two are kind of boring, and I reject boring, so let's get back to Jarl Balgruuf, and importantly, back to his creepy crumb cruncher, Nelkir.
A web of connections between mortals. Love, hatred, loyalty, betrayal.
So, out of Balgruuf's 3 kids, Nelkir is by far the most interesting, predominantly because he actually has voice lines, being tied to a Daedric Quest, and he has some strange revelations about Balgruuf's family. For one, if you talk to him during the Whispering Door quest near the start of it, Nelkir will reveal that he knows a lot of things that he definitely should not, including that he doesn't share the same mother as his siblings. And here's the dialogue.
That he worries about being chased from Whiterun. That I don't have the same mother as my brother and sister.
He also calls Balgruuf a disgusting pig, and let me make one thing clear to you, you little turd bucket, you don't talk to my boy like that. Still, this disdain is interesting, since we don't know what happened to Nelkir's mother, and it's clear that this is information the rest of Whiterun isn't privy to, and that it clearly hurts Nelkir, since he hesitates to state it while he doesn't hesitate to talk about any of the other secrets. He also reveals that Balgruuf still worships Talos, which doesn't seem all that surprising considering there's a giant Talos statue in the main square, but whatever, Mathala. We can call that a secret too, I guess. He also hates the Thalmor almost as much as the Stormcloaks do, so we can give him a thumbs up for that one. Another thing Nelkir states is that Balgruuf is afraid of being chased out of Whiterun, but why would this be the case? He seems pretty well respected throughout his hold and Skyrim as a whole, plus he's a guy with all the power in Whiterun. His soldiers die defending him should the Stormcloaks try to take it, so what's up with that? What possible reason could Balgruuf have for being chased out of his own city, especially when his closest friends and family have been instilled in his court? Well, adultery would be one thing, especially if his wife was a beloved figure, something that we don't know because no one talks about her. It's like this woman doesn't exist. We're also assuming he even had a wife to begin with, and didn't just have a harem of concubines, which is where his kids came from, but from Nelkir's statement, it seems that he once believed he and his siblings had the same mother, thus also assuming that there could have been a somewhat stable maternal figure in the family at some point. This could mean that the skeleton underneath Dragonsreach Bridge is actually the body of Nelkir's mother, Balgruuf's concubine, murdered in an attempt to keep the affair secret, which would explain the boy's sheer disdain for his father even more. He goes so far as to say that he'll tear his father's face apart just so he can leave him alone. It's pretty dark, but what if there's another, even darker step? What if Balgruuf got rid of Nelkir's mother, but his wife found out and she was removed from the equation too, explaining her absence? You can kinda just pay a concubine off to never talk again and leave, so Nelkir's mother doesn't necessarily have to be dead, but perhaps Balgruuf's wife was killed for finding out about this secret affair, and a body was thrown on the Dragonsreach Bridge to hide it. The truth is, we don't know for sure, but what we do know is that there must have been more to the story of Balgruuf's family, planned by Bethesda and the Whispering Door quest, since there is evidence that not everything from the quest made it past the cutting room floor.
Few hear my whispers anymore. I am Methala, the Lady of Whisper.
The Skyrim data miners of old discovered that Balgruuf actually had a replacement, and I'm not talking about a certain Greymane. He's more of a usurper. No, you see, Balgruuf's brother was actually meant to take over following our favourite Jarl's death, but this obviously never came to be, because the Jarl doesn't die in vanilla Skyrim, even if the Stormcloaks take his city. How do we know that Bethesda might have been planning his death? Well, Hrongar has cut dialogue talking about it, which I couldn't find directly on the internet but can be viewed in the game files with the creation kit. If you want a more in-depth look at the cut dialogue, I would suggest looking at UnknownG's content, which I'll leave in a link in the description below. The thing is, this isn't even the tragic part. How Balgruuf is killed is what's tragic, and it would have made the Methala quest really goddamn dark. You can sum it up easily in one word: patricide. You see, two of Balgruuf's kids just exist. It's not a lot to them, but in earlier versions of the Whispering Door quest, all three of his kids are involved. According to the cut dialogue in Polish, of all languages, Nelkir becomes even more influenced by Methala, and I'll read some of the translated dialogue for you here. If you want to hear the original lines in Polish, again check out the description for UnknownG's content. We need the help of my brother and sister. We'll have to convince them somehow. The Whispering Lady has a good plan. Hrothgar is able, but he lacks strength. We'll need to teach him to be more decisive. Dagny is frivolous and simply lacks the impulse to act. So, to get Dagny involved, you basically butcher her favourite horse and blame it on Balgruuf to make her hate her dad. It seems like you give the ebony blade to Hrothgar in this draft to let it corrupt him, I guess, and he would actually be the one to butcher the horse, from the sounds of things, and the kids would then proceed to do a Caesar on their old man in his bedroom. But we're not sure where the story goes from here, and Balgruuf doesn't seem to have any additional lines. This could imply he's murdered in his sleep, or Bethesda didn't get far enough to start planning some of his lines. What we do know is that Proventus Avenici, the steward, is involved in some capacity and possibly locked away, maybe getting the blame for the whole thing. Which does make sense given that Hrongar, who would have been the new Jarl, does get in a disagreement with Proventus after discovering that you are Dragonborn. So maybe they just don't like each other and this was a way to get rid of the steward. Of course, this would mean that another steward would have to come in to replace him, and we don't know who that is. We're also not too sure what Bethesda's plans in general were. Maybe Hrongar would have been Stormcloak leaning rather than his brother being Imperial leaning, given that he proclaims himself very much the warrior and very much the true Nord. The problem is, we don't see a full vision here. This is the cutting room floor after all, and Todd and his crew may have realised at this point that the quest was getting far too dark for their intentions, so they ultimately scrapped it and left us with a pretty half-baked version. Still, I think this version of the quest could have tied into the skeleton under Dragonsreach's bridge, being Balgruuf's wife, lover, or whatever you want to call her, at least thematically. And the content not making it past the cutting room floor could explain why the skeleton is in the game but has no information about them. Then again, it could just be a cool little Easter egg and something for fans to find, but it's been 14.5 years since Skyrim released and there's no Elder Scrolls 6, so we gotta talk about something. Now, Methala is all about betrayal, lies, deception, and murder. It's kind of her entire thing, and given that most of humanity doesn't necessarily trust Daedra, and that Mathala only really found worship among, I guess, regular people with the Dunmer, the question arises of why the Whispering Door is even in Dragonsreach in the first place. Perhaps the original portrayal in Dragonsreach was Balgruuf's affair, and thus the death of his wife, with maybe her being the wielder of the Ebony Blade. If she intended to murder the Jarl for revenge, Irileth could have been the one to stop her, kinda tying in two theories at once. Mathala wants us to use the blade on our closest friends after all, so perhaps this checks out. Or maybe Balgruuf is the one who used the blade, manipulated by Mathala, to murder his wife and/or mistress to keep the whole thing about his affair under wraps, and this is why he's so afraid of being pushed out of his city if this ever comes to light. This would then make the whole revenge thing a cycle, since Balgruuf's kids are, perhaps inadvertently, taking revenge for their mother, all influenced by Mathala, and ensure the Daedric Prince's influence remains strong in Dragonsreach. It's apparently implied that Hrongar would have been a much more brutal and much more violent Jarl compared to his brother, playing right into Mathala's hands. This is all assumption, however, since we don't know where Bethesda wanted to go with this and if they even had a strong idea. They could have planted these very dark seeds, and the idea just got away from them in the writing room, leading them somewhere that they didn't know where to go with. So this could be the reason for the quest getting cut, not its darkness, despite the cut version shaping up to be something very intriguing in my opinion, but that's just a theory. A game oh, can't say that one, that's not my catchphrase, I don't want to incur the wrath of the mighty MatPat. But still, what do you think of this theory? What do you think of the cut content? And also, who do you think the skeleton belongs to under that Dragonsreach bridge? It's not like any of this really matters, because again, the content never made it into the final game, but it has been 14.5 years since a mainline Elder Scrolls game was released, so we are scraping the bottom of this barrel. Thank you everyone for watching this shorter video. I did a plot hole video for Ulfric, and this is more of a what could have been video for Balgruuf, considering that Bethesda had intended to do far more with not just his character, but the family unit around him, but it never materialised. Balgruuf is a character with a lot of family around him, especially for a Jarl, but Bethesda didn't really do anything with this in the end. I think this is one of the coolest cutting room floor finds in Skyrim, and while it's been around for a while, I'm not sure how common the knowledge is for all of this stuff. I mean, I run an Elder Scrolls lore YouTube channel, I'm always looking around for this kind of stuff, so my perspective probably isn't representative of a normal human being. I also can see that this video is a little funky, being a combination of a theory and cut content stuff, which yes is weird, but it's a fun one to research for me. Again, thanks to UnknownG for his videos on the cut content, and I highly suggest looking at the two videos that I put in the description below if you want more on this and want to hear the first-hand sources. In general, if you ask me about anything Elder Scrolls lore related, I'll try my best to provide you with the sources. But that's all I've got today, so once again, please do the like, comment, and subscribe ritual in an attempt to appease the YouTube gods, and hopefully I'll see you in another video.
Sails fly at half-mast in the